Awesome. Thanks for having me. So my name is Mike Ebinum, from a company called Shedda. And yeah, today I'll be sharing a little bit of a project we did last year, looking at sex, pornography, and relationships, and how to improve the sexual health literacy of young people. So I'll just share my presentation, but feel free to have any questions you might have or thoughts. Just feel free to ask them, and as I speak through, I might just get to them as we go. Okay, so I hope you guys have been having a good day so far. Been learning a few things from this event, and wherever you're joining in the world. It's good to be here with you. So yeah, the project I'm going to be talking about today is called, we kind of dubbed it the Porn Project, co-designing a digital health resource with vulnerable young people to enhance sexual health literacy, which I mentioned earlier. Um, so we'll do a little bit of acknowledgements. So um, I'm currently in Melbourne, Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which we meet in um, here in here in Melbourne, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Um, so a little bit about our organization, Shedda. Shedda means to create in a language called Yoruba, out of West Africa, Nigeria, which is part of my heritage. And we're a diverse group of designers, strategists, and engineers that collaborate with public health researchers and clinicians to design and deliver digital products and strategies. Um, we like to work, we have specifically focused in working in health and social impact organizations, and using inclusive design and immersive technologies to tackle interesting problems. Um, it's a bit about our purpose, and yeah, about what we'll be talking to today. I'll go through an outline of the project objective, who the target audience was, and what we did, and yeah, we'll end up with questions. So uh, the objective was to co-design a digital resource with vulnerable young people. So young people, this project was kind of kicked off by Vic Health, which is a local public health initiative in Victoria, where I am. Vic Health found that young people were not getting um, a good education around sex and pornography, and most of the information that they were getting was from media, um, and mostly porn. And porn use is normalized and is seen as this source of education, and most of them don't necessarily think that it affects them. But our research shows that it does. But we'll talk more about it later. And because of their exposure to pornography and how um, that influences their behavior and their thought patterns, it impacts on their general health and behavior around in relationships. So the key problem is a little bit of a joke. Um, is just unrealistic expectations around sex and relationships. Um, so porn just teaches us unrealistic and unhealthy ideas of sex, but also of how quickly plumbers and pizza guys will come to your house. But to be fair, Uber Eats is changing that, so it's a bit dated. Um, so yeah, the research that we had showed that 87% of young men and 97% of young women watch porn at least weekly. So that was research out of um, the Journal of Sex Research. And our target audience for this project, where young people aged 14 to 16 who are engaged in youth services. So the idea being we thought in order to find people, in order to find young people that would engage in this research with us to help us influence the design and development of the digital tool, we decided to look for people who were engaged in youth services, alternative education, or public housing service providers. So, and whatever we kind of created had to cater for a diverse group of people. So that's included gender, sexual orientation, diverse family background, cultural and linguistic diverse backgrounds, etc. So this is quite a challenge. It was kind of not the easiest set of people to engage and find and to design for. But the thinking behind that was, if we can engage with these folks and understand the needs, then it will be whatever we design for them would also be useful or be beneficial for everybody else. So that was the target approach that we took. As I mentioned, the key problem that as we defined it, was young people were not getting information about sex and relationships and pornography. They just turned to porn. So one of the ways we decided to engage young people is to use co-design, which was it's short for inclusive participatory design. And the idea behind that is you're designing solutions with the people as opposed to for the people. So because co-design, we kind of thought a suitable solution because it's because of the sensitivity of this kind of issue. And it allowed us to be flexible and iterative, and allow us to have a high degree of engagement with the people we're designing for, in this case, young people. So to get them to, because this kind of topic, no one necessarily, when you're researching, no one necessarily, it's easier for people to show you what they think than to say what they think sometimes. So our design process was very activity-based. So getting them to show us and not tell us. It was youth-led. So our lead researchers and lead designers were just slightly older than demographic. They were between 21 to 27. We kind of created a process that allowed for evaluation. So while we used co-design to engage with the folks that we're designing for, at the end, we actually engaged a different set of people to have a look at what we came up with. So this allowed us to be flexible and iterative in our approach. The approach that we took was first to kind of do, it was over a few phases. So first, understand the problem, define what we're going to do, and so ideate solutions, design that solution, test, and evaluate. So all this was underpinned by an ethics review process and practice. So this project, while it was a collaboration between ourselves, Sheda, and the Burnett Institute, which is a health research institute here in Melbourne, and our design team and their public health researchers collaborated together to come up with the activities and to undertake each phase of this. So that meant we had the rigor of an academic process, because the health researchers were publishing papers around the process and the outcomes, which I can link to after. But we were coming in from a digital product development and research perspective as well. So that team dynamic worked really well in having a diverse group of people as part of the design process for this. So our young co-designers were 17 people. They were in between the age of 14 to 23, and they participated in the workshops. 5 were female identifying, 11 male, and 1 non-binary. In order to get young people to engage with these young people. As I mentioned earlier, we partnered with organizations that are already engaged with young people, such as the Stonington Youth Services, Star Health, and Melbourne City Mission. For recruitment, we kind of leverage those organizations I mentioned, and ran like small ad campaigns and use flyers and the workers in those institutions kind of ran information sessions to kind of give them an insight into what they would be doing. And we also offered gift vouchers as incentives. So our co-design process, from the first step was to understand, which is our objective there was to learn about young people and introduce them to the project topic, and just to get a general understanding of their viewpoint on sex and relationships and what they think and how they see the world, how they see themselves in the world, what they like, what do they do in their spare times, how they learn, what they see as everyday challenges, what frustrates them, and what are the current digital ways of that, how digital tools play a part in their lives. So this understand workshop, some of the things we did to kind of get an understanding was what we call the hot or not board, which was inspired by, I don't know if you've ever, anybody ever knew the website Hot or Not, which was kind of like you posted pictures of yourselves and different profile pictures, and people would rate it if it was hot or not. But in this case, we were using that concept to see what is hot and what is not in their world. Exterior, like, well, is Snapchat is hot, Netflix is cool, AFL is cool. AFL is the local football league here. From that, we kind of get a sense of the aesthetics and things that they gravitate towards, like the things that they like. Instagram came up a lot, and Snapchat, which is what young people use a lot in this time. And from that, we kind of got the young people to create personas. So with different backgrounds and stories and background and stories, and from that we then got them to create scenarios using Lego. So we used Lego Serious Play as a way for them to describe scenarios, like, okay, this person Sasha, she's 14, we have a background story to her or to them. If she wants to ask someone out or someone asks them out, what happens if they want to engage in anything to do with sex, and how do they do that? But instead of getting them to talk about it, we got them to create Lego movies to kind of show that process. So that was an insight to how they thought. And it's just some of those assets as to what they thought was hot or not. Which was it was one of the interesting things that we found was, like, smoking was perceived as negative. Emojis are not hot, and as I said, Spotify and Instagram was kind of cool. So it was just kind of, and so that's kind of interesting exercise. I just spoke about the persona activity. So got them to create personas, give them personality. Talk about the things that the person likes, and then from there, this activity was actually quite a lot of fun and really engaged them in terms of teaching them a new skill. One of the things that we wanted to do as part of the research was make sure they felt that they learned something. So giving them the ability to play with Lego and create a Lego stop motion movie was kind of cool. And also the conversations around that activity was actually very insightful. We found, like, because of as people are doing the activity, and the conversation around there was actually a lot of where we gleaned a lot of a fair bit of our insights from. And then after that process, we had what we call the define workshops, and this was to allow young people to define what they saw as the problem. So we initially thought, going into this project, we had the view, hypothesis, like, porn was the problem, but we wanted them to kind of help us define what exactly they saw as the problem, what the challenges they faced when it came to relationships, where did they learn from? Did they have a critical understanding of porn and its impacts? What do they like to know? What would they like to learn? What were they concerned about? In the co-design process here, we kind of did a whole bunch of activities. Like one of them was porn versus the real world, where we kind of got them to give us insights into what the attitude of porn is, and what was realistic, and what they saw as realistic and non-realistic. The general perception was like, yeah, they kind of said, oh, we know porn is not real, and they kind of say we don't watch Harry Potter and all want to be wizards. That was their statement, but they didn't really realize that some of the attitudes and beliefs around sex were influenced by porn, or just general by media. Because one of the things they said, like, just through their conversation, was like doggy style and anal were the same thing. So they didn't have deep insights into sex. They just had their attitudes were heavily influenced by media and also porn. And around the conversations they were having around these activities, they didn't really understand. We also got an insight that they didn't really understand things like safe sex. Like one person there is a young father, and another person, they were having a conversation. It's like, oh, you just don't have sex once and get pregnant. And the guy was like, haha, surprise, that happened to me. And so there was just no they hadn't been exposed to that idea, and they didn't really understand it. And then at the end of one of the things that came out from just all the conversation and the activities is they never have the opportunity to talk about it. So they never have a space where, like the one we created, where they could actually just have opinions about these things, or share opinions and stories. So that was an insight to us, is like there was no space for them to do that. And then one of the things we did as like the end of this workshop was actually have an activity called "You Can't Ask That," and that was around to get into insights into what they thought were taboo topics, and what they'd like to learn. So this allowed this kind of this fed into the next workshop, which was the idea workshop, and the objective of this was for our young co-designers to tell us how they would create a solution. And this was quite a lot of fun. We got them to prototype and come up with different solutions. And one of our favorite was an extension tool called Masturbation Norton, who would help, who would live in your browser and go around deleting any revenge porn that might show up. So this was just, we weren't, the point of these activities was not for them to come up with something that was realistic. It was just something to come up with creative solutions, and and not necessarily think about how that would come to life. So Masturbation Norton was the scenario was like design a sex education superhero. They came up with that. That was quite a lot of fun. So the concepts were all blue sky, and also another favorite prototype that they come up was a way to kind of contextualize sex and porn in media, whatever they're watching, and it'd be an extension that would kind of pop up and talk about, let's say, for example, if you are watching the Notebook, it might pop up and kind of talk about how the portrayals of relationship in this were kind of dangerous and have an edge of an edge of a kind of like hints of dominance, male dominance, and unrealistic expectations about dating, just kind of stuff like that. So that was that kind of helped us as part of our design considerations. So some of the things where they learn from the young people, whereas like porn is fake. There's no difference in term. While they recognized pornography was fake, they didn't understand how they learned from it passively. There was no difference in messaging from pornography versus real life, because through popular culture, family and peers, they had like just so it's just like the agreed upon social constructs as to how things worked. They had no access to alternative information or representations of sex, relationships, and sexuality, including consent, the actual mechanics of sex, especially for people that identified as LGBTQ plus, what healthy relationships and sexual ethics look like, sexual pleasure, safe sex. The mainstream information that they got was from pop culture, and part of the design consideration was thinking about how we can empower them to create with a solution that allowed for their independence and personal agency, so they can discover and find stuff out. And they should also that solution also should have considerations of trauma, like experiences of trauma, and how that's important in the way that sex and relationships are approached with any digital resource, and also what it means to have critical media or porn literacy, like similar to how I think a lot of schools have media literacy now to kind of identify what is fake news and what is real. So having giving them the ability to be able to critique messages in media and understand the social scripts that are there. So all this kind of made us realize that we had to reevaluate what our objective and expected outcome would be. So we came up with a how might we question, which was how might we disrupt the influence of pornography on the health and well-being of vulnerable young people. We also had how might we questions around changing the conversation about porn and how to focus on alternative representations of body, sex, and gender, how to normalize female pleasure, how to make relevant information about porn and support services easy to find and accessible, how to seek information online, create accessible information about the what's and hows of sex for young LGBTQI plus people, and so they understand the mechanics. We also took into consideration from our research partners from the Burnett Institute what the health promotion best practices were. So like an intervention carried out over a longer period of time and repeated. So it just can't just be a single session thing. It has to be repeated multiple times and explained in different ways. There should be multiple settings, and information should be given at multiple settings, either on an individual, family, and community level. Should be tailored to relevant subgroups and culturally and gender appropriate settings. So it depends on their age. What is relevant for a person that's 14 is different to what's relevant for someone that's 16, but they can also find and that information based on their discovery. And also they need to have a way that their peers can share stuff with them, and because we know that helps influence their behavior and their attitudes. So the solution we kind of came up with was we called the gist, and the idea behind the gist was to create a digital health promotion tool using two key platforms, a web-based app, and service delivered workshops online, aka online toolkits, that can be downloaded and used by either health workers, families, community, etc. The reason why we kind of we recommended two approaches was it can be the gist can be a conversation tool for workers to engage with young people, and also to give them access to something that they can then explore by themselves. So because it's web-based, they don't need to download an app. They can just go to a website. And also we're trying to avoid the need for another app. But because but this can be used as as I said, an introduction piece, to help as a conversation starter. And then but the service delivery workshops we kind of thought would be useful for people either in schools or service providers or people that work with young people, because from the activities we did, one of the things we learned was the social workers and people that work with young people didn't have any resource to work with. And they initially thought that the young people that we were engaging with wouldn't be open to talking about this. But from looking at the activities we did, they were quite interested in saying, oh, their feedback we got from them was, well, there's nothing for us to use, or there's no framework or toolkit that we can use to kind of run this kind of things with with young people. So part of our recommendation back to Vic Health was to look at extending, creating service workshop toolkits so that people can download and use. I'll just step you through what part of what we created. So most of the application was kind of inspired. It had like it was a lot of the mechanics and the look and feel was inspired by like that hot or not collage. Like, we wanted to make it fun, make the colors vibrant and something that people will engage with. The app had different sections. So the top is something which we called Get Facts, and they had a short article sections, and we had like interactive game called Debunked, where they test themselves on different myths and quizzes as part of the solution. I'll walk you through. So the Get Facts section is kind of works like Instagram stories up the top, and each one of these had like little stories based on the topic. So there's porn, there's sex. So it's like if you click on the sex one, for example, it might say, oh, 65% of people don't like oral. And so the idea is these facts kind of prompt people's curiosity, young people's curiosity. And if they wanted to learn more about it, they can just click on that link and that'll open up an article. So yeah, that's the thinking behind that. And then the articles kind of have information. We engage a copywriter that actually worked with creating articles for young people around sex. So they had experience in that. And a lot of the copy was very is kind of short and have progressive disclosure, so they can jump to different topics based on what they're interested in. The debunked section had different games and different ways to test yourself. So you can test yourself. It's kind of like works at the similar mechanics to Tinder, where you can swipe left or swipe right. And you're presented with a fact or a myth, and you have to debunk it. So by swiping left or swiping right, and it kind of tallies up how you do. So if you do it like 3 or 4 of them and you get 2 out of 4, a funny message comes up and tells you that you need to kind of do better. And here are some links on how to learn about that. This allowed them to kind of taking that same activity base, just watching something or listening, trying to read an article. You're actually interacting and trying to learn at the same time. And then we had all sorts of quizzes, which on all the different topics on dating, etc., to kind of allow people to test their knowledge as well. And also this kind of thing is also shareable. The idea being that you can share your score, like, oh, you got 3 out of 10 or you got 8 out of 10 for this quiz, and you can share it with your mates and see how they do and compare scores, that kind of thing. So the key thing we learned from all this and the design of this is the style of the content. And the content is really critical, and our content strategy was focusing on the changing the conversation about porn, rather than focusing on what if porn is good or bad. I'm not trying to create a moral judgment here. It's just giving them enough literacy to kind of make a decision by themselves. But obviously, the content is kind of structured in direct format. It's very experience based, and it kind of contrasts popular representation versus reality, and then it gives them call to actions and links to further information as you go. So the content topics kind of talked about how porn can negatively affect people, them and people around them, how to seek out quality information, and how to and where experiences of shame and pornography use porn do happen, how they can get support. So we had links to support services that they could use as well. So the evaluation process was done by the university public health researchers from the University of Melbourne, and the objective was to look at how, if this solution, the GIST, influenced knowledge, attitudes, and behavior, and also to see, was this enjoyable? Did they enjoy using it exter? And was it desirable? So that evaluation has been done, and the general feedback was it was very enjoyable. They were very engaged. People did use it, and we had analytics all through to kind of see how people used it. But they found, because of it was a prototype and there was a diverse group of young people in the evaluation process, that the content was for some people too graphic, and so for some people was not enough information. So the part of the feedback was, well, there needs to be a broader there needs to be a broader array of content. So I'll just kind of summarize what we learned. That from co-designing with young people, it's like, number one, we had all the assumptions around things that they would be into or interested in talking about were mostly wrong. So while we should have assumptions, you should probably throw them out the window once you start engaging with young people. Be flexible and adaptive in your approach. Create an energy that they respond to, and allow them to lead the way in the process. So while we created activities that would engage them, we were adaptable in terms of, if we found an activity wasn't working, we just change it and chuck it away. The process is as important as the outcome. And this was quite a time-intensive project in terms of trying to get people, in terms of trying to recruit, engage people exter. And it's also possibly important to commit to understanding your target's needs rather than our intended outcome. So we had to change what we thought the outcome was once we engage with the young people. So that needs to be flexible in that sense. And with the whole process was quite messy, and it takes a lot longer than you would think. So our key takeaway was that using co-design as a tool to kind of to approach this kind of work is very useful, because it allows for different perspectives, and allowed us to come up with what we think was a great outcome. So collaboration and diversity in the people that are collaborating are super important, because we had researchers, public health researchers, designers, content writers, technologists, all in the same rooms. Means we came up with ideas that we wouldn't have if we just did it by ourselves. And if you're looking to tackle like really sticky problems, it's kind of good to have a diverse team around you and to use a tool like co-design to engage. And these are the folks we worked with, and just like to acknowledge them. And thanks for your time. And I don't know if my time is totally out, and if you have questions.
Thank you so much for that, Mike. Really appreciate it. I'm sure that was quite interesting working with the youth and trying to demystify what the actual thinking is all about, because I can definitely be clear that what we've been taught in school and reality is two worlds apart.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just going to, we've got about 5 minutes left, where if anyone's got any questions, we can just hang out here. Otherwise, we can just start our next session. So if you have any questions for Mike, we've got about 5 minutes. Okay, brilliant. So thanks for that, Mike. I appreciate it. If you have any slides, you can just share it on our Slack group, or I'll be emailing you soon after, just for all the speakers to share their slides with us. And guys, thank you so much. Brilliant. Have a great day, Mike.
Cheers. Thank you.